All right, we are on with Peter Goral. Peter is social media brand strategist. Very excited to have you here, Peter. One of the taglines that you have is amplifier of your brand identity, as well as you are your brand, right? So there's a lot of topics that I want to talk to you about. Very excited to have you on. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks very much.
So, Peter, for to contextualize the conversation, can you tell us, who you are, what you do, and for the fans to know as well?
Well, you summed it up in the fact that I'm a brand amplifier.
Hmm.
Um, I'm I believe that people don't really care who you are or what you do, but they are generally very interested in the problems that you solve and the service that you can be for them. And I found a specific problem in the market where, and you've probably seen this yourself, there's so much noise. It's
Hmm.
hard to disseminate what is valid and what is, just noise. And so it's hard for a customer, a person to get bandwidth and to get airtime. And
Hmm.
so what I focused on for pretty much the last 11 or 12 years is amplifying in good quality content that's sustainable and that can, bring the audience to you, attract them to you.
Yeah, I think that this is a very important topic to touch on, mainly because in this age, creating a brand identity for yourself, especially for your personal brand, is becoming more and more important, as we move forward. But then to your point, given that there are so many different ways to do it and so much noise and so many different platforms, how would you go about really doing this?
Well, it depends on the client. And
Mhm.
and and in all honesty, I don't rush out into the process. The best way to really understand where you belong and where you should choose to go is is on what exactly it is you're doing. I think you have to disseminate what it is you do, how important a role you are to your potential client. Where is your client? Like, what platform do they exist? I mean, why open a Facebook page if your B2B client is not there? Uh, on LinkedIn, for instance, you're not going to get very many um, business to consumer type opportunities there. So, I mean, you have to choose it. So I take a very steady, very, I almost want to say deep dive with my clients to see exactly what their goals are, what their business goals are, what their thresholds are for pain. It takes a long time to get
Mhm.
noticed in a market these days. Do you have time? Do you have the patience? Because you need this, right? So rather than push people out and start solutioning, I usually end up having a 2 hour conversation and then a 4 hour conversation. And sometimes it goes, my investment in the time up front is equal to what we get out of it. Like, the
Right.
outcome is based. The better time we spend deep diving, being introspective, getting personal, the better the outcome for everybody.
That's very true. That's very true. It's basically quality over quantity. And I did want to ask, because you reminded me of asking you this question. How important is building your personal brand in the success of your business? Because I know that business marketing is one side of the story, but then what about the leaders within the business? How important is it for them to build their personal brands on the success of
I-
the business?
It's a great question, Reza, and in fact, the when I look at a company, I don't look at the building, the entity. I look at the people that make up the company.
Hmm.
And usually it starts with somebody who has a vision and is, driven by a passion to doing something. Well, that person owns a brand, whether they know it or not. And many people don't have an idea in the in the beginning that they should be selling as them. You
Hmm.
see, it doesn't matter what market you're in. People still buy from people.
That's true.
They don't buy from entities. They actually don't buy from a brand. They buy from a person who has kind of put themselves out there and shown their genuineness, their authority, their expertise. That's what attracts people.
Right. That's very true. Authenticity goes a long way, which kind of brings me to this point that I want to make. Since social media these days calls for a lot of people's attention, there's so many different sources where people's attention is being drawn to. When you want to attract clients attention, or your audiences or community's attention, sometimes thinking about quality over quantity becomes difficult, because you get stuck in that race or that loop of trying to just send out content, get attention, so it doesn't really become personable or customized. So how would you really go about getting around that trap?
You used a pretty interesting term there, race. It's not a race. You have to take yourself out of the race, right? There's no such thing as a race to the finish where the business is concerned. You need to, first of all, dedicate your time toward a market that you understand. You know, I would rather you, as a person, even a leader in a company, decide on one thing that you do really, really well.
Hmm.
There will be other things behind it that go into supporting it and become part of the ecosystem that serves that one thing. But you have to learn to do one thing at a time. Like I made reference to the fact that I amplify brands. Now, if you know how an amplifier works, it's a sound system, a piece of a sound system setup where input comes in and you change the tone and you change the volume and you change the bass and the treble, and you then fine tune and put out to the speakers a finished product. That's how I look at brands, and that's how I look at messaging. Is that let's take the raw essence of what we want to put out there,
Hmm.
or maybe to talk about, and let's take a look at it and drill down and see what is the most important aspects of that message, and then fine tune it before we put it through the speakers. So in the case of a message, it needs to be somewhat refined, right? It's probably all over the place when you first get the idea. It's a bunch of acronyms, a bunch of layers, a bunch of things that go into making up a final solution. But let's look at the one thing that runs as kind of like a common thread between what you do and by solving a problem, and what you believe your customer or your target customer needs by virtue of a solution.
Interesting. What you said really reminded me of Inception. So Christopher Nolan's movie Inception, where there was a scene. Tom Hardy was saying that if you want to plant an idea in people's minds, it has to be in its simplest and most raw form for it to be sustainable. So is that something that you're alluding to as well?
Oh, absolutely. That well said. That underlines the drive behind doing that. Because if you end up talking too much, saying too much, you're giving your audience questions that they hadn't even thought about.
Yeah.
It's almost, I liken it to going to a regular restaurant and a fine restaurant. You
Hmm.
go into a regular restaurant, you're going to have lots of fishes, lots of meats, lots of pasta, everything. You go to a fine restaurant, and what do? They choose for you. They have one special dish,
Yeah.
one meat dish, one fish dish, right? So that you're not confused. It's easy. It's easy to make a decision when somebody says, this is probably the best thing for you, Reza,
Hmm.
right?
For sure, for sure. It
Well,
is easier that way. And you made a very good point. When you go to, let's say, diners, they have menus that are 3, 4 pages long. It's like you're reading a magazine. But then you
right.
go to a fine restaurant, it's very limited choices. They just eliminate the paradox of choice for you, you know?
And it's quality and it's expensive, and so think about the concept there of consulting or driving your business. You don't need to serve hundreds of people.
Hmm.
You just need to serve the people that get you, that understand your value, and you can make a living, and you can survive by containing yourself, in the place that you belong, not where you think you belong.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What you said reminds me of also Seth Godin. I was listening to him talk about marketing, and one thing he always said is, don't think about serving the entire world. You have a community, you have a set number of people in your audience, serve them, because that's basically quality over quantity, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. Like somebody got me thinking a little while ago. I was on a show and he said, why do you go out to the world with your message? And when if I if I had my druthers, I could just go outside my house, and within 2 blocks of my own house,
Right.
there's probably 30,000 people there,
Hmm.
and I couldn't even service them. But the definition of your market is more to do with people that are in sync with you and in sync with what you supply them with. And
Hmm.
that's why, it to go global, you might as well. I mean, there's never been a better time in my life than right now, because I envision, and I know the world is not flat, but think how flat and how level the playing field really is globally. Because here we are on Zoom. I've been on Zoom almost all day. I've been on Zoom with people from Australia, from the UK, from Canada, from the United States, right? And all in one day. And so, like,
That's
go figure.
globalization. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
totally right. I don't need to be. I don't need to be pushed any harder. I mean, I know that I can do the same business as comfortably over Zoom, with a good conversation with somebody in the UK or somebody in Australia. It happens. That's all there is to it.
For sure, for sure. And I think that, this does speak to the quality of content and the quality of connection that you're creating by, you know, investing your time in actually getting to know the people and the businesses because they want to be heard. Which takes me to my next question. I was really curious to know, based on your experience, what are the set of criterias that businesses kind of judge other businesses and want to see if they want to work with them. So is it authenticity? Is it quality of service? So I know there's kind of a hierarchy to it, right? And I want to know what is in the top 3 or 4 based on your experience.
One of the things that people want is what other successful people have, you know, have received.
Right.
So, for instance, nobody likes. I always say nobody likes to be on the dance floor first with you. They always want a point of reference.
Yep.
You know, there's a way of marketing yourself or of socializing yourself to attract your target by proving to them the value that you've been with somebody else. And obviously testimonials from people that you've worked with is a big part of this, of the answer,
Right.
because when people see from your presence and your personality that you're putting out there online, they make up their minds really fast. They say, I want to work with someone who thinks of people the way they do. I want to work with someone who cares for people the way that they do.
Hmm.
And it's, the mindset of someone looking for help and the mindset of someone selling help, they're so far apart, and they needn't be. Because if you are trying to attract someone who actually needs help, you really just need to define what that help looks like that you offer. Make it easy for them to consume, right? Let them almost desire you because you've done such a great job with somebody else.
So thank you for that. This kind of reminds me of your three-stage approach, which I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you said that the first thing is awareness, right? So put yourself out there, and the next one is basically that quality interaction that you were talking about, right? And then the third one would be engagement. So can you dive a little deeper into that as well and
Yeah,
explain that a
there's
little
a
bit?
yeah, absolutely. That's my solution in a nutshell. It's very simple. It's easy to consume, and I utilize what I call a rinse and repeat approach to
Rinse
it
and repeat.
because it should never end. It's a cycle that should never end. But when you're starting out, the first thing you should just do is introduce yourself, say hello to people. You don't actually have to tell them very much about in fact, I would not start telling them about what my solution looked like. I would just say things something like, hi, I'm Peter. I actually live in your world. I exist in your
Right.
domain, right? I'm over here. Yes, I'm in Canada, but I have friends in the UK and I have friends in Australia. I'm open to, conversation. And I run that and that introduction, that awareness, because if you haven't gone public or to socialize your message before, what are you going to do? Come out of the block saying, "Hi, I'm Peter. I'm a management consultant, and I do this and I do that and I do that." That's like walking up to someone at a party and asking them what they do, and they go on and they rattle off, a 300-page
Oh, yeah,
resume.
those
Like,
are
forget
terrible.
it. It
Yeah.
was before long, you're saying, "I'm sorry, I asked you the question," right?
Yeah. You regret asking the question,
Right,
right?
you do. And so the second stage is what I call the educational or thought leadership stage. That after you've built the awareness and that they know where you are and they know how to reach you, that you should now start to show them the quality of the insight and the knowledge that you have about the problem that you solve and the domain that you both live in,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes it doesn't always have to be what you yourself developed, because there are great people in your community. For instance, if you're into digital transformation, for instance,
Mhm.
there's some great material out there, and there's some great blogs and some great articles about there. If you can actually take that and start to present and show people, giving them access to this information, chances are they wouldn't have found their way to that.
Mhm.
I liken it to an art gallery curator, right? So a guy who runs an art gallery, he doesn't necessarily painted all the pictures, but he knows enough about art and he knows enough about the artists and the style, and he brings them all into one place where he can showcase them. So when you think about thought leadership, that could be like a library of really valuable information. Now, it helps if you're a professional in your industry and that maybe you've written an article or two yourself, or maybe a blog. I would flow that in. The third part, the engagement part, is actually the most fun, believe it or not. And it's the easiest because you don't really need to build content by, building a graphic, building a post. All you really need to do is go in, say, to LinkedIn, look at the people that live in your domain, in your area of interest or expertise, and go and speak to them on their posts.
Hmm.
I love it when somebody posts something and I find the subject intriguing. I drop in and I leave my opinion. And if you can do that diligently and deliberately and meaningful in a meaningful way on a daily basis, you will soon build a reputation even within the people that, don't forget, there are people passively looking on the outside.
Hmm.
They may not be talking and they may not be in your domain and they may not be in your network, but they're still looking and
Wallflowers.
they're saying, yeah, they're wallflowers. They totally are, but they're interested. And if all of a sudden Peter Goral keeps dropping in, leaving these nuggets of information, these sound bites of fantastic ideas, these aha moments, right? And all of a sudden, I guarantee you, the person is, I want to connect with you. I love what you said on such and such a guy's post. And it's a rotation, right?
Hmm.
So you go and so you do some of your own, you send some, you curate some of other people's, and you engage. You got to engage. You got to do all three, and you do it in concert. And there's a flow. If you're attached to me on LinkedIn, you'll see there's a very deliberate process that I put myself through, and I also take my clients through it, and
Hmm.
I manage that for them. You
Rinse and
know,
repeat. Yeah.
totally. You've got to do it. It's the only way to sell shampoo. They say.
That is very true. You you touched on a few interesting points I want to dive deeper on.
Okay.
And after that, I'm going to jump and talk about LinkedIn for a minute since you mentioned that
Okay.
as well. Very interesting that you mentioned, awareness and then the thought leadership and engagement. It seems like awareness would just need you to be present on social media and people would already know that you're there, right? Now,
Correct.
when it comes to thought leadership, I really, really appreciate two words that you used: curate and sound bites. I think these two are both very important and it means a lot to me personally. So I quickly recognized and wanted to, let you know how important it is to be able to curate different forms of knowledge and of sound bites, whether it's from yourself or from the people that you're connected with. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you add value. You can add value with your own content and with your own work and experience, but you can also add content or value through connecting other people together. So that's very important. Now, regarding the engagement piece, I want to know how one can get over, let's say, the kind of fakeness that prevails on LinkedIn generally, where you see a lot of cliche posts and posts that are very similar in structure, and people kind of get lost in that game. I want to know your thoughts on LinkedIn and then on this issue that exists exists as well. Sorry.
That's okay. That's just part of the noise, Reza. That is just part of the noise. That inauthentic, just blah 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 that's coming
Mhm.
through. And you find that anywhere. You'll find that on any platform. It all starts with your personal mindset in the beginning. You can't forget awareness and thought leadership when you go into engagement, because these are the building blocks toward engagement. You have to be totally aware that there are people watching that you're not talking to, but you are displaying to.
Mhm.
These passive people that are just paying attention.
Right.
And the building up of valuable insight is 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 important, because I want to only engage on that insight. I don't want to go on and start talking about the weather. I want to go on and start a conversation that's associated with something I'm truly interested in.
Hmm.
You know, people, I'm actually a bit anti-authentic as far as the word is used. It's been used and overused
Right.
actually. And I always say to someone when they say, well, like, what's the difference, right, between authentic and being real? And I always say, does a lion tell you he's a lion?
Not at all.
Not at all. Thank you very much. He just shows up, right? So if you come to the table like a lion, you'll be recognized as such. And there's a way of laying yourself up. And you can't forget that. That's being real. That's being in the moment with everything that you are and everything that you say. That's what makes a difference. And you will stand out like a sore thumb, as they used to say. You'll stick out like a sore thumb when you are that real. The word authentic won't even come into mind or come into play, because
Hmm.
people will say that person is so real. I love what he said about John's post. He actually added value to John's post. I'm so glad you shared that with me, Peter. I get a lot of this, right? Because I know what good content looks like because I follow good people.
Right.
I follow some of the mentors of my life, right? John Maxwell, Ken Blanchard, key individuals who are uh, I term it servant leaders in our world that really just give, give. Right? They don't take anything. They always giving, and it makes you wonder whether they're going to run out. They're not, because one of the things they're doing is they're giving of everything that's around them,
Right.
not just their own time and their own brain power. They are also curating the things that they've consumed in their life. And they've said, they don't push it down your throat. They say, here's something I've come to know over my 30 years in business. It was good to me. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be perfect for you, but there's components of it that I think are worthy of your attention. I
Right.
listen. I
Right.
mean, just you
That's,
just hear that when you hear things in that context, like, what are you going to do? Say that's garbage?
I
You're,
want to
you're
read
gonna
it. I want to
you
know
want to
more.
read it? Absolutely.
That's kind of like what Ray Dalio did with his book Principles. He's like, you don't have
Yeah.
to read this necessarily, but hey, if you consider me a success and what I did, here's a list of principles that I lived by. So I was like, yeah, I want to know what you live by. I want to understand your principles.
Yeah.
So that piece is very important. So you touched on another key word that you use as well, which is servant leadership. Can you explain what that is?
You know what? The person, the person who leads, but doesn't take, like, he doesn't take all the glory. He
Right.
actually, he actually, for instance, if we were going to be at a table to eat, he's the person that eats last.
Right.
Simon Sinek talks about, being the leader that eats last at the table. These are good solid examples. Um, People who lead from the back, who allow their people to grow and to make mistakes and
Hmm.
to mentor them through those mistakes. People who care about the image that people make for themselves, and make those slight adjustments to individuals so that they learn and grow. I mean, they're people who are selfless. John Maxwell is a perfect example. So is Ken Blanchard. These guys just they are the epitome of these examples where their people come first, and then them after. And I don't think they ever get to the point where they take themselves too seriously.
Hmm.
I think they care more about what's gone on in front of them.
Yeah, for sure. That's true leadership, and there's been a lot of examples like that, both recent and older leaders who've been like that. So That's definitely something important. Now, talking about not wanting all the glory, how do you how do you think businesses and individuals, because businesses are individuals, how do they have to go forward without getting lost in the game of numbers? Because sometimes you start with authenticity. I know you don't like to use that word a lot, but sometimes you start with authenticity, but then as you go forward you start getting addicted to pumping up your numbers, number of views, number of likes, number of people who are engaging. How do you avoid that pitfall?
I never pay attention to the views
Hmm.
because the views aren't, because number one, I know there's something I know that no one can take away from me. I'm not for everyone, and I'm not for anyone.
Very well
I'm
said. That's
I'm
very
for
well
the
said.
one, yeah, I'm for the one person that sees something that I did, or see or hears something that I said and goes, that registers with me. And I feel good about I've found somebody who feels the same way that I do.
Right,
That
that's your
that's
tribe.
all that's all I want. That's all I want.
Yeah, that's your tribe. And a follow-up question on this. Also wanted to get your thoughts on the plethora of new platforms that are being introduced. I know that we connected on Clubhouse as well. And I remember you talked in one of your interviews about TikTok and many other platforms that are coming on. So do you think businesses need to jump into every single one of these and dip their toes to experiment, or stick with the ones that they're already good at?
There's a mindset that you have to follow the cadence or the beat of what's going on around you.
Hmm.
You know, from an investment point of view, it probably pays you something as an individual or a company that's trying to make some headway in the market to at least take a look at the new platforms. And I mean, I'm not a silly person on TikTok. I use TikTok to log my day's journey, how it starts, because I'm doing something for myself,
Hmm.
and I use it as a discipline to make a small 30 to 40-second video of myself about the fact that I finished my workout today. I'm feeling pretty good. And here's my thought for today. And then what I'll do is I'll repurpose that with some music, and I'll put it on my Twitter account, and I'll put it on my Instagram account. But what is that doing? It is personalizing me. People know that I run my business, people know what business I'm in, but they also like the fact that I'm going to be a guy.
Right.
I'm going to be a husband. I'm going to be a father. I'm going to be a grandfather, right? Like it's like they just say, okay, there's a guy. I've got I've got a couple of people on TikTok that follow me because I don't know why, but they think I look like Robert De Niro, right?
Well, there is a resemblance. Yeah, there's a
so they
resemblance.
and they keep jumping on, and the one guy says, "Hey, De Niro guy, how you doing?" Right? Like, and he calls me that, right? And I'm thinking, but you know what? That's what connects us.
Right.
We're just being natural with one another.
Hmm.
And there's room for that in real life, and there's room for that in real business. There really is. Because if I was to bring and line up my clients today for you right beside me, and you ask them one simple question: what is it that you like about your relationship between yourself and Peter? The one thing they're going to say is that, well, he's always natural. He's pretty much down to earth. He calls a spade a spade. Like, you know what? I don't have time for falsehoods. And I can tell you right now, most of my clients don't have time to waste,
Hmm.
right? And if you're going to follow things that aren't good for you, then you're going to waste their time. And so you've got to search the platforms. I know we got a little bit off topic there, but to get back to your question, you've got to search and evaluate the platforms and test them out. I'm not the first guy who said, you know, Facebook is no good for this,
Mhm.
or Instagram's no good for that. There are some businesses that Instagram's amazing for, right? And this LinkedIn is just great
Yep.
for business to business, and where you want to make great connections. I was so happy to see that LinkedIn transformed itself. I'm an early adopter. It was brought to my attention like almost the year that it was built,
Are
and
you generally an early adopter? Because
I am.
I appreciate that. That's
Yeah,
okay.
I give it.
Interesting.
I'm not risk averse, right? And I'll tell you why I adopted it really quickly. I used to be an executive recruiter
Hmm.
and in technology. And so my friend came back from California. He was working for a company there, a CRM company in California, and he came back to Toronto, and he said to me, "Hey, Peter, I've just met these two guys, this platform, and it's for resumes." So you know what I mean? It's online resumes.
It's for
So
resumes. Yeah, that's what it
yeah,
was back then. Yeah.
that's exactly. So, and I said, okay, you had me at resumes. You had me at all, like, because I'm a recruiter.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding? I said to him, I said, Rick, are you kidding? I said, I'm all in. Like, I don't care. I don't even care what it costs me. And it was free. But, I don't care what it costs me because I know that I need access to data on people as a
Mhm.
recruiter. I was so glad, though, over the years to see it transform to this great big, I call it a big trade show. That's what it looks like to me.
Interesting. Yeah. Digital
It's a
trade show.
trade show. It's a big trade show. Like I go into a big place like in Caesar's Palace, and I can walk through and I can see this guy's got set up and this guy's got set up. This guy sells great. This guy doesn't sell great.
Hmm.
I mean, think about it. That's exactly, it's this great big networking room.
Yeah.
And that's really all it is today. And you know, the days are gone where we used to go to trade shows and actually have great conversations one-on-one with the individual that attracted you to their booth.
Hmm.
Well, you have to use the same mentality on LinkedIn. You got to make your booth attractive,
For sure. That's
right?
part of branding. And earlier on, what you said, by the way, just to shout out, I this is the first time we're talking, but what your clients and the people you work with say about you, natural, and you're down to earth and very knowledgeable. I mean, I can attest to that even through this call. So had to call that out.
Thank you.
And since we touched on LinkedIn, I want to get your personal opinion on Clubhouse as well. I have my own thoughts on Clubhouse and where I think it's going, but I want to know, what you think about the platform.
Well, I've been on now for a few months,
Hmm.
um, and I'm enjoying components of it. I have two rooms that I'm in every week now. I have a partner, Violet, Violet Alexander out of Philadelphia,
Hmm.
and she is the co-founder of a company, a online SaaS company. Her husband and her have this great little business called Brilliant, and she reached out to me, through LinkedIn, and we formed a really good relationship quickly. And we now have a room called Creators Studio. So it's for creative people, right? So I'm an artist. She's a singer, but she's also a very strong business development, chief sales officer for her company. I'm a business development person, so we click, but we talk about creativity and business development together. And then my other room, and I was just on earlier today, we've gone 2 days this week, is called LinkedIn Unplugged. And my partner in that room is a fellow by the name of Monty Clark, who is a real LinkedIn specialist, self-taught, but has just gone into the platform and torn it apart. I mean, he has examined, it's almost like, you know, it reminds me of the when I was a kid, you know, my mom brought home something and I tore it all apart and didn't know how to put it back together again.
Right,
But
right.
he's but Monty's like that, you know. He's like, I've taken a look at this machine. I'm going to tear it apart. I'm going to find out what's inside, and I'm going to see if it's got any meaning to it.
Hmm.
And so we've got that. We've got those two clubhouses now. Clubhouse is great when it's tight, small to medium sized, where everybody gets a piece of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a great fan of these rooms with 2,000 people in it and two talking heads, like the gurus, right? Because, you know, Reza, they're going to be everywhere. Those same gurus that exist on LinkedIn, that exist on Twitter, that exist on every other platform.
100%.
You know what they've done? They just brought their tribe with them, right? And all it is just another place to blow steam,
Mm-hmm.
right? And create influence. And I have a feeling that they're probably hoping that eventually Clubhouse will pay them for bringing people to the platform as an influencer in the same way that YouTube did and Instagram does, right? Because there are people that are making money just for bringing an audience to that platform. Right. Now, that's a falsehood to me, right? I find that selling short because it's just, you're just using your stardom, if you want to call it that. I don't even want to call it that. But anyway, I don't know what else to call it at this time. But you're using your stardom and your status and your 10 million followers and you're bringing them there, right? Like, and I'm not interested in that, you know, like I'm really interested in a real person getting a real opportunity because of a real conversation that I had with them.
For sure, for sure. Some very interesting points here. So I do agree with you on the group size. I think when the groups get very big and there are very few speakers, it's just like a radio, really, you know. And I do think that there's a huge opportunity to leverage networking with people and like voicing out and creating your brand on a place like Clubhouse, because you can really engage with the people on the platform, with your customers, with your community. So I always tell my friends that as well. There's a big opportunity there. Although right now, like you said, there are a ton of rooms that make a lot of noise, but don't create a lot of quality content, right?
Right.
So
Right.
so that's Clubhouse. I think that it has a lot of opportunity though, for sure.
Well, I'll tell you, I have met some really interesting people who I know if I tried an alternative route, I probably never would have had the opportunity to meet these people.
Right, right.
Right. And the other thing is that every time I'm in a room, I pick up a minimum of 10 new people.
That's
Right?
that's the
A
beauty.
minimum.
Yeah.
You know, so how often do you want to go into a room? I can tell you right now, I'm a working guy. So, you know, it's a time suck if you're not careful, right? So I do have deliverables for my clients and I have to keep my head on attached, right? So, because it's so easy to get dragged into a conversation
Very easy.
and it goes for hours, right? Because it gets so interesting. And then somebody pings you and goes, "Oh, you should be in this room. Oh, you should be in that room." Like hold the horses, right? Like no, like I'm sorry, buddy. I just, you know, I ignore it. I dismiss it. You know, I do what I can, right?
I think that's very important that you do. It's overwhelming, honestly, Peter. Like even for myself, not just Clubhouse. There's Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and I'm like, I really need to just, get my head together and focus on my life because you can get stuck in this virtual world for sure.
Well, yeah, well, think about it. I actually, every day I get up, I post for me corporately, me personally, my clients corporately and personally, develop conversations, develop content, pull together thought leadership, drive business, drive lead generation, bring up meetings, develop webinars. Like I do all that.
Right.
It's a constant machine behind the scenes. So I use my me time sparingly, right? Because there are times where yeah, I just need, a breath of fresh air.
100%.
Put down the phone, put down the computer, go outside, breathe some air, go for a walk, go for a hike, rejuvenate yourself and then come back at it. Like I don't want to lose that time by going on Clubhouse.
That's that. Yes, very, very true. Very important. I actually wrote down a mini poem today and posted it on Instagram about feeling overwhelmed with so much noise around, and you sometimes feel like a puppet, because there's so
Right.
many things pulling you, and you need to really be intentional with how you use your time for sure. So for the sake of time, Peter, I want to ask you one last question since it got me very curious. You said you are an artist as well.
Yes.
Can you talk a little about that? What kind of art do you do?
Well, quite a bit actually. You can probably see
Yes.
something in the
Yes.
background there. You see
Oh,
that
that's
it's like a lily pond,
yes,
right?
yes. I,
So
I appreciate the colors and the
yeah,
mixture of the palettes.
I'm working on that. I have to finish it for an auction on the weekend, right? It's an auction that I support. My local art school has an annual auction, and they raise funds to give uh, art schooling for children, right? That ordinarily couldn't afford.
Hmm.
So that's something I give. But I've been an artist since I was a child. It's just a gift, It's one of those things that I'm just blessed with, from birth. And it's something that I developed. It's something that I worked on. I had a great mentor and art teacher back in the UK, where I'm originally from, and yeah, I just love it. I mean, I'm in an office, but it's also my studio, and then I've got a workout pad that I put on the floor, and like this is my spot, right?
I
This is where I live and breathe.
love it, love it. I appreciate that. It's good to see people who are, active in both the business world and the analytical, logical world, and also in the creative world. I myself try to balance this out in my own life, and certainly do appreciate to see people like that as well. I'll definitely reach out to talk more art with you, soon. So
Well, it's the spot where they say, like, the minute I stand up and go to the easel, I lose the rest of the world,
right,
right? I'm in a different zone,
for sure. I can
right?
imagine that.
And
You're in a
and
flow.
and and, and you can't bother me, like I almost feel a little bit like a software developer, and that my wife can slide food under the door, and I don't I couldn't care if I saw another person until I've got my heart in and through the project, right?
And that is precisely what keeps us sane. That
Yeah.
is precisely what keeps us going. I think we all need habits and hobbies, I mean, like that for sure. Well,
Yeah.
Peter, we're at about the 50-minute mark. I really want to appreciate, you coming on and speaking. I learned a lot personally, so thank you so much. And yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
And I'll make sure that I invite you over to You Are Your Brand, and we'll talk Reza and what Reza does and what Reza gets involved in with his
For
life.
sure. It will be a pleasure to join you, Peter. Thank you. Take care.
Awesome.